Hey everybody, David Chatham here with Angel Oak Creative. Welcome to our latest episode, season 2 of Nonprofit State of Minds, where we kind of pick the brains of nonprofit leaders, get some insights, and just help us all hopefully to do a little better in the nonprofit sector. We have a great guest today. Bria Arline is the CEO, founder, and chief grant writer and queen of grants at IQ Ignited. So welcome, Bria.
Thank you. You forgot Chief Chaos Officer, which is
Oh,
what the
that's
team
right. I
like
did leave that one out.
called me.
So,
Thanks so
well,
much for having me
welcome,
on.
and thank you all. Thank you for all you do for our nonprofit sector. I know people are going to learn a lot today. First, we'd love to learn a little bit about your journey. How did you get to the nonprofit sector? How did you come to found IQ Ignited?
Oh, well, that's a great question. First, I do not deserve to be in the company of the amazing nonprofit leaders they do far more than any human being should be allowed to do. And we so appreciate them. Our clients are the salt of the earth. So IQ Ignited grew out of a company I was working on the side for about 10 years. We did a lot of, well, I was before we had did a lot of services to help small businesses and nonprofits tell their stories well. And then, everyone has a but COVID story.
Right.
Um, I was working actually 2, 3 jobs at that time because I'm just an overachiever, burnt out, really just, I remember putting my head on my desk and saying, you know what, God, I hate everyone, myself
Oh,
included. And so it was like it's the time to make a change. And a mentor told me, you really need to stop doing so much and just focus on the one thing. So I decided to pivot and just focus on grant writing. It took off. We've now got team members across the globe, which is very
wow.
funny to plan team meetings.
Gone
Have a team
global.
Yeah, they're gone. Our clients are limited to across the US. And again,
Yeah.
they are amazing. I'm so inspired by what they do every day and have an incredible team. And I'm the queen of nothing except how much trouble can we get ourselves into? How big of a project can we take on? And they make it happen. So I really appreciate them.
Well, tell folks a little bit about IQ Ignited. What do you do? What is your role in the nonprofit sector here?
We are a grant writing and consulting firm, and we do everything from the entire life cycle of the grant. So research, we help with cultivation strategies, we do the grant writing, of course, and then post-award.
And
And we're
what,
predominantly
oh,
in
go ahead.
education. No, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just like, we work in education, and human services.
Yeah. Well, when I've followed you for a while, admired you from afar, and have seen, the great work that you all do. Um, grants are an interesting animal, right? I mean, they're both welcome additions to people's fundraising portfolio, right? But they're also sometimes intimidating and frustrating and elusive and, all of those things. So tell me just a little bit about why you chose to kind of go into the grant writing world and what attracted you, which is totally, I don't understand that, but I'm sure you've got a good explanation. But
Most
yeah, I
people
mean, what
don't.
what what attracted you to that world?
Well, and no, most people think I'm crazy. I think grant writers are crazy, honestly. There's just something wrong with us.
Well, you're
Uh,
definitely unicorns. Let me put it that way. So,
True. Well, two things. I always I wanted to do something that made a difference. Again, did not feel called or equipped or smart enough to go the nonprofit route. I've worked in the nonprofit field, admire everyone there. It's a different animal. Um, and then again, love overachieving. I There's so much to a grant proposal. You have to know finance, you have to know the salesmanship, you have to know great communication skills, you have to know nonprofit structures. You're never bored. Boredom is probably my greatest fear in
yeah.
life. And then of course you get to be, as I was talking to a team member, you get to be the angel to the angel. So
Mm.
take some of the pressure off the people who are doing great work. So I absolutely love the grant writing space and the grant world and grants in general. They're like having teenagers, and I love teenagers.
Well, I mean, we work Angel Oak, we work with a lot of clients. We don't do grant writing. That's not something that we want to do or that we have, particular skill set at. I mean, we have members on our team who have produced some really solid grants over the years for their organizations before they came to Angel Oak. But, it's just not our bailiwick where we want to spend make our focus, just because it is such a specialization. I guess one question that comes up a lot is, why are there some grants that, and maybe you don't know the why, but how do we address grants that are so kind of onerous in their requirements for submission, and then also for the execution of it and the reporting of it? That has to come into play when you're looking at grants for your clients, and just what is involved in, if they do get the grant, what is involved in, sustaining that grant or reporting on that grant. And that's a complaint that a lot of nonprofits, and, we're doing these uncharitable screenings right now, Dan Pilata. And, a lot of that, and I don't know if you follow them on LinkedIn or anywhere, but crappy fundraising practices is one of my is one of the accounts that I follow. And they actually call out by name grantees or grantors who have crappy fundraising practices. And it's a little uncomfortable, but it's also refreshing in some ways. So anyway, a long setup to just kind of ask, what are grantors thinking when they're creating these grants, and how can nonprofits either help change that or just lean into it and own it?
It's quite a lead in.
Sorry about that.
No, I'd appreciate my mind's going for so many different places, reeling it in here. I think what you have to look at when you see funders is they're like us. They're doing the best they can. They've got some best practices that are probably out of date. You think about that idea that nonprofits need to spend 85% of their funding on programming and like 15% on administration. Well, that's a great idea for you to try to figure out, okay, are they spending too much on administration? Are they getting, wealthy off of donations and charitable dollars? And, trying to make those decisions, because you're essentially giving quite a bit of money oftentimes to an organization that you don't know in a field that doesn't have tangible, if I invested in IBM, we're not arguing about whether or not it was a good investment. How's my bank account? You don't get that with social profits. You're really trying to see, and I love, there's a consultant, his name's Joel Kern from Impactus. He says, and he talks a lot about theory of change. There's a reason why it's called theory of change. It's a theory.
Right.
We're testing it out, but we're putting a lot of money, we're betting a lot of money on, this is going to work. Now, certain things, I mean, if you're paying for food distribution, how many people did you feed? But then we go deeper. We don't want to just feed people. We want to help make the problem better. So that being said, I tend to give funders grace, especially if they've been in that mindset for some, well, yes, it is. We try to give grace. Plus, just to be fair, they hold the strings. But realistically, I've talked with funders, and they are just to talk with program directors and just people on the other side. They want to know, the good ones, how can we do this better? I mean, I think one of the huge wins we saw even with the Universal Guidance Code update was, hey, can we put more towards indirect costs? Can we make this simpler? Can we raise the audit requirements? Just something the federal government, which is, if they're changing, something's going well, to make things easier for our nonprofits and for those actually on the ground. So I think, honestly, continuing the conversations. One of our clients, they are so great about just keeping that rapport open with their partners. Hey, we love the fact that you fund us. We really need to invest a little bit more in development so that, we're not relying on you. So just being open, honest. We're in a great time for grants. Things are changing so much, both with technology, both in, how funders feel like things need to be done. I love following Peak Grant Making and some other organizations that are trying to change the narrative and change the way funders think about doing grants. So we're getting there. It's slow.
Yeah.
Granting is something that's going to change over time, but hey, at least we're seeing change. And
Yeah. Well, so talk a little bit about that change, if you would. Where is it? Where do you see it going? And just you know, what what would a more maybe equitable, a more effective fundraising, granting universe look like? What would that look like in your mind?
in my mind, I have to be kind of careful how I say this.
Yeah, yeah.
Realistically, I look at ourselves as we're in need, we're a means to an end. So if there ever comes a day where we spend more time doing consulting than actual writing, that's fine with me.
Mm,
I've heard some funders actually going the route of, hey, can we just have a conversation with you and really just understanding and you know, we love grants, we love putting together a business proposal, but if you're funding a nonprofit year after year after year, we realize you're too small to have the staff to even review those reports that you're requiring. How about just have a conversation?
oh,
um,
that's a good point. Yeah.
uh, so there is that. So I think we're moving towards funders are starting to put themselves in the shoes of their awardees. Hey, we don't have time to review the reports. Do you actually have time to write it? Um, Realizing that just because an organization is scrappy doesn't mean they're not doing great work. How can we support you? So I think it's moving towards more of trying to have more trust in the organization. Also, and honestly, this is why Angel Oak needs to exist. Um, there are a lot of funders who are paying more attention to the websites, the social media. One of my favorite books is Inbound. It talks about inbound marketing. It's called They Ask You Answer. And it really has the idea that we've shifted how we make decisions and how we um, find information. So some funders, even the idea of invite only, I want to say last time I checked, it was about 60% of private funders. So if they're invite only, they have to hear about you. So you need to be
Mm,
pretty vocal about what you do and making sure you're
yeah.
telling the story effectively, both, in the social media channels, on the web, and even with your core people, getting out in the community, letting them know what you're doing. It's really, really important to have a strong brand these days.
Hmm. Thank you. I do, just full disclosure, we did not pay you to say that,
Oh,
or
no, you do not.
but yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, I think, I mean, going back to that idea of kind of equitable, more open system and all, is that possible? I mean, there's such a large universe of folks out there, and there's such a demand. I believe in abundance. I mean, I think there's enough money to go around, certainly. But if a nonprofit is really heads down and doing their work right and focused on it, they're probably not the ones screaming from the rooftops for attention, right? So I don't know. It feels a little backward in some ways that but I guess it's like any organization. You have to be able to tell people your story, or else they don't know it's there, right? So
Right.
finding
Mm.
that balance, I guess, is probably a challenge for most organizations.
It
How do I
is.
stay focused on serving my community that I'm dedicated and committed to serving, while also serving ourselves and making sure that we're top of mind, right?
Right. Right. Also didn't mean to jump in there.
No,
Um, that's such a great, it's so great that we don't live in a world that's full of narcissists. With that word's overused, that most people don't
yeah,
want to brag about themselves, especially, you know, these incredible human beings who've given up often, much, much better paying jobs and benefits to go into the social profit space, right?
right.
Um, I think it's just
Which
having,
isn't fair in and of itself, right? That's
it's
not.
not,
I
it's not.
mean, because we want to pay people, right, what they're worth and what is equitable and fair and all of those things. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic.
It is. I mean, we
I
have
know,
keep
right?
going so many rabbit trails. I think it's really shifting the mindset for those nonprofit leaders and understanding that it's not just the work that you do that needs to exist, you need to exist. And in order for
Mm,
you need to exist, we need to partner with you. And in order for us to partner with you, you have to tell us how.
yeah.
So I mean, there's there are organizations where, you know, even just on my end, like had I known you existed 5 years ago, I would have partnered with you then.
Mm,
I wish I would have known. And you
yeah.
think there are those that community that once they hear about you, whether that's grantors, whether that's private donations, they just want to connect with you. They have a need. They have something that they want to achieve. They're like me. They're too busy and not gifted in that way. And they want to hear about you and they want to know how can I partner with you and realizing, hey, no one's going to be able to tell them about you except you. I like almost often I liken it to evangelism, and give me a second, I'll make that
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah.
They have a need, they want to make a difference, they want to plug into a community, they want to do something with these resources that they have, and then you can meet that need. So go tell them the good news. Hey, you have a need, we can meet it, and let's partner together. So it's actually not about bragging. It's
Yeah.
about let's call our partners and let's create something. Let's create that just, equitable society that we all want to see
Yeah.
together.
So your experience with grantors, we talked a little bit about maybe some of the bad and the ugly, but let's talk about the good for a little bit. What are the grantors, the funders that you admire or that you appreciate the way they approach? What does that look like? What are they doing that you see as positive as some progress towards a better approach to granting?
Ooh, I love that. I'm trying to see if it would be good for me to actually name names. Um,
I'll leave that to you.
I will try to not do that so they don't
Okay,
get even more applications.
sure.
But there are a couple, even just in the local area. We were writing for a very prestigious foundation. They are not easy to get funding from. One of the things that I saw that they were doing was amazing. They had indirect costs. The allowable indirect rate was 20%. That is, it's
Well,
normally 10 across the board, which I was like, oh gosh, thank you. And they put it even in their application, these are some examples of indirect costs, like maybe your audit. It's so hard to get an audit covered.
right.
And they put that into the actual guidelines. And so we wrote that into the client's budget because the client was new with us and we were just going over their finances and said, hey, you're not asking for indirect costs. Well, they were awarded a very sizable grant, and now part of that gets to cover audit. I mean, just taking
Awesome.
some of the pressure off. Another local funder, they're doing amazing work. And I was talking to the ED and she's like, we want to really partner with our awardees. So they don't just give money, they give, training, development.
Yeah.
They create dinners so that their awardees can come together and just and see, okay, where are some unique synergies? You're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. So it helps take the pressure off. And yeah, I mean, you've been in philanthropy. Sometimes it's a cutthroat business, and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be. I mean, we're
No,
not
it shouldn't.
competing.
Yeah.
We're trying to make a difference. So I think, yeah, I see more and more of that to where funders aren't seeing themselves as just above their awardees and, you need to make this happen for us and making us like, okay, no, we're together, we're partnering together. How can we help you do what you do well? And then tell us what we can do to make things
Yeah.
better for you. And I love that.
Well, I may be stepping out on a limb here, but a couple that I've seen in the area, uh, I've noticed that State Employees Credit Union Foundation has tried to, they've certainly built into these mission impact grants, the capacity building and are fairly generous with that. And that can go to fundraising, to marketing, to even branding in some cases. So I love that they're making that effort to invest in the capacity of nonprofits. I've also seen John Rex Endowment start to move into a total funding model where they're funding the entire project and not just the programmatic part of it. So, and I'm sure there are others. I'm sure I'm leaving out many, many others. But, I know those two just most recently, and Coastal Credit Union Foundation is also in that world, working to minimize the effort that is required of nonprofits to not only apply, but also to report on their progress of their grant. So, kudos to them for being willing to do that. And I'm glad you're seeing others who are taking those steps to, to improve that process, to make it less onerous, to make it more focused on impact and less on just generating data or paperwork, right? So
Right. And, since you've already put out three funders, just to be fair,
you may disagree with me, so that's okay too.
no, I love them. I was I was like, well, to make it just so they don't get it, since they're going to give it a new burst of grant applications, we'll just go ahead and make it even. I love the funders I was referring to was the Duke Endowment, which I love them so much. They're really doing great things, and the Jimmy Carroll Foundation.
Oh, good.
Yeah, they're amazing. Honestly, the Jimmy Carroll Foundation, I've even just their approach to partnering, that's huge. So far as it's not just about money. We're here to make a difference, but we're here to make a difference through our awardees. So yeah, it's changing. I think honestly, in 10 years, we're going to live in a world that didn't exist before in the best possible way.
Yeah. Well, and maybe I'll reach out and see if we can get some of those folks on the podcast too. We just had Creighton Blackwell from Coastal on in our last episode. I believe it was our last episode. And have would love to speak to some of those other folks. So hopefully maybe that will you planted a seed that maybe will grow into something into some conversations there.
Yeah, if I can make some introductions, yeah, they are fantastic organizations, and that's just in the triangle interstate.
Right.
It's a conversation that's sweeping the US, and even on the side of just how we approach even international funding. It's this idea that, there's been a story of power, and I don't want to make too much of it, but it's now becoming a story of partners, and I love that.
No, I love that. And I mean, I know it's trite, but we are better together, right? I mean, we are when we're working together. I know when we partner with a fundraising consultant, like an Armstrong McGuire or a Moss and Ross or one of those here locally, and we're able to work together, we often see much better results than when we're working. Not that we're working not that we're working contrary to each other, but just that we're not working as a team. We're working more in separate silos. So when we do work together, it really is powerful. And I see the same with nonprofits. And when they partner and put aside some of those kind of competitive views and look at the collaborative view, amazing things happen. So I do hope that is a trend that is happening and will continue to see that, because it makes life so much better for everybody. And sadly, I think we've created somewhat of a competitive landscape for the nonprofit sector versus a collaborative one.
Right. Just looking at, we have gaps. One of the questions that we consistently answer on our grant applications are, what do you do differently than no one else does? Well, then, if you're going to ask that, the next question should be, well, who else is doing the other things that you don't do? And how can we put you together? And how can we make this a partnership and just a unique synergy so that, we're not, it's past not duplicating services. It's more, okay, look at the incredible impact. We actually believe there's a solution to this problem, and putting our heads together and partnering together, we might actually see it to where, our youth are transitioning into better employment. There's the housing crisis isn't a problem. Problems can be solved. I think we forget about that. We're not just putting a Band-Aid on it.
Well, it's a great opportunity, I think, for the funders, the grantors, to play that role of connector, right? That because they see, they get two grants that come in, and one is really focused, let's call it, let's look at the social determinants of health, right? And one is education, the other is homelessness. And the overlap is that kids are going to do much better in school, right, if they have a safe, stable home. So
Right.
what's the synergy here? What's the connection here that we can make to bring it together? And there may not be one, but at least to have that eye and that consideration, I think is really an interesting opportunity for all funders to say, we got this request over here, and then we got this one over here. Man, if we can fund both of those and help them to work together, it's going to multiply the impact, right? And maybe I'm living in a fantasy world, but that seems like it makes total sense in my mind. So
I think we should all live in that fantasy world. And
I don't know. You don't want to be up here, Bria. You don't want to be up here. Well, good. Well, as far as, so talk about what, I guess kind of getting a little more granular with grants. What seems to be the one or two most common hurdles that nonprofits face when they're, you talked about maybe awareness being one of those, but other than that, are there other kind of common hurdles, common problems that nonprofits run into when they're in the grant space?
I would say there's just with grants, there's such a lack of standardization.
Hmm.
We have
Yeah,
best practices and we try to follow those, but you have different levels. So a family foundation, they're going to do their best, but they have to
yeah,
work with their capacity. You have the federal government, very risk averse. Not even the federal government, just governments in general. You get more and more risk averse because it's tax dollars. No one wants
yeah,
to waste those. Um, and so we have an idea, or we're formulating an idea of what best practices looks like. But because everyone seems to be implementing that at their own levels and at their own stages, I can tell you this is a good idea, but just know there are like 20 nuances.
yeah,
And so it's just continuously learning and continuously growing. And that for a nonprofit to a point where their head's just down trying to get the work done, that's very hard to
yeah,
have continuous learning.
yeah. Talk about the role of a grant writing organization like yours. You certainly can do a sales pitch, but I'm not asking you for that unless but I mean, what is you all do great work. I've heard people, praise the experience with you. What does a grant writing organization bring to the table for a nonprofit?
Well, we bring a few things. Main thing is we give you your time back.
That's priceless, right?
That is priceless. You can't get that back. Take a little bit of the pressure off. We have one client, national organization, executive director called me, said, Bria, the funder is asking this. What on earth do I say?
Hmm.
And just that idea that you have to your point, what are funders thinking? Because we live in that world, it's easier for us we're not even pivoting. We're just working at that point. You
Yeah.
have to pivot. We just kind of live here, which is a scary place.
Yeah.
Uh, those special competencies, knowing the difference between how do you approach a private funder versus public funding, what's a good idea for budgets, and even knowing that we have time to be in that continuous learning world, and we invest so much in professional development, even for our own team, because things are changing and we want to see how we can do it better. So essentially, we give you peace of mind, we give you your time,
Hmm.
we give you some very specialized skills, especially if you're looking at a very robust um, grant program. And then honestly, we give you money too. I know that's weird because we are a firm, we do get paid. But think about the time that your people are not spending and how much you're not paying them to have to do something that they really aren't specialized to do. So, overhead goes up when you're not quite sure what's the best direction, how to best approach it.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. I mean, I think most people think of grant writing, that service, as just writing the grant, right? But 90% of what you just talked about didn't have anything to do with writing a grant, right? It really had to do with providing advice, providing support, providing insights into the funder's mind and all of those things, which that's well above and beyond sitting down and physically writing a grant. So I don't know that people, and maybe they do, maybe I'm underestimating, but I don't think most organizations, when they're thinking about, wow, we ought to hire a grant writer, they're not thinking about all the other value probably that comes with that, right? It's probably like, okay, we've got a grant, we need to get it knocked out. Let me find somebody who can get it done because I just don't have the time, right? So, but there's a whole lot more to it than that in terms of the value that somebody like you and IQ, the organization like IQ Ignited brings. So I think that's something that, if people didn't know that, hopefully they will take away from this conversation and see it as a real opportunity. I know in the conversations we've had, I've always walked away with new information and new insights. So, this one included. So we appreciate that. What are you hearing from your clients as kind of their for this for us at Angel Oak this year seems to be a little strange, and just transparency, we're a little slow right now from a business perspective. We have some clients who are uncertain right now, right, about funding and uncertain about the next 12 months. We've got an election year. We've got, inflation. We've got a lot of, and the trend, even though it's not huge, the trend seems to be that funding, at least individual funding, is on a bit of a decline, right? So what do you tell your clients, or what are you hearing from your clients, maybe both, about this particular time in their life?
Well, that goes to making sure you stay up to date because things do change so quick, so rapidly. There's a lot of uncertainty, particularly with who's going to get in power, what are they going to fund, what's inflation doing. I like to honestly tell you, the thing about our clients, data is so important. How is this comparable to something that's happened in the past? What's been working? One of our in my network, I talk to fundraisers all day, just because I want to learn, I want to grow. Grant writing is not, it's not in a silo. It is in a silo, but it becomes part of a larger, healthier organization, a healthier fundraising strategy. So
yeah,
making sure with private funders, please, 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 please don't cold pitch if you can help it. Please talk to them. Please build that relationship. Because again, trust it's always been important, but it's becoming so much more important, especially as they're being inundated with all of these other grant proposals. And they're reluctant to give money because they don't know what's going to happen and they want to make sure that their revenues are healthy. And having those conversations, like, I know you feel like this is not a good time for you to let go of money, but let me tell you why. If you do, the impact you will have with us is that much more special. Having those conversations. We've got a client fantastic at that. I love reading her emails to funders. Realizing, being prepared for if the economy goes down, traditionally government funding goes up, being prepared for that, and just being aware of those opportunities and realizing things will normalize. Nothing stays the same. You have good times, you have bad times. Not bad, lean with lean times.
Right.
And it does right itself. So don't panic, I should say.
That's good advice. And very simple too. So,
it's too simple, but
no, I love simple. That I'm simple, so I prefer simple. If you had to give folks, or if I'm asking you to give folks, nonprofits, one piece of advice around the granting space, what would you really want them to hear? What's one thing that you want them to take away from this conversation, or maybe something new that you haven't said yet?
I would say never underestimate the value of a plan. A lot of times what gets nonprofits into trouble is not sitting down and having that plan. Okay, if we, to your point, for reporting, if we get this grant, do we have the capacity to carry it out? Have you pitched something wildly wonderful to the funder and then your programmatic team comes back to you and says, and how do you propose that we carry this out? Have you taken into account, hey, this is an election year. We don't really know where our funding's going. Is this the right time for us to be promising these wildly, incredible outcomes? Or do we need to kind of forecast if we have this much funding,
Hmm.
what can we actually accomplish? Even the grant side, we're very big onto if we can create a 12-month calendar, let's do that. And then we can pick our 5 to 10 funders who we want to invest in building those relationships who have more promise. Just focusing your time, effort, and energy it'll take so much pressure off. It will drastically increase your return on investment because you're not pitching to an organization that, if you had taken a moment to research them, you realize that their assets have been going down. So therefore their funding has been going down. Or
Hmm.
you could spend your time pitching to that other funder whose assets have been going up and they've had a new influx of cash. Oh, let's approach them now. To your point, a lot of grant writing, you mentioned that I said most of what I told you was 90% not writing. 90% of it is not writing, it's planning. It's
Right.
it's the stuff up front and then executing at the end. Once you do the planning, the execution becomes that much more fruitful and that much more uh grant writing is never easy, but it's
Right.
easier.
Right. Well, I mean, two things you mentioned. One is data, and I know recently you've talked to our friends at Datable a little bit about some of the work they're doing with funders and others. Um, Data is like grant sometimes is a little intimidating. It's also not the most exciting world, and for me, it drives me nuts. I am not a data person. I love the results of data. I love having data. I don't like acquiring data. I don't like being responsible for collecting data, right? But if you give me data, I will love it. I will tell stories about it all day long, right? Um, is that new, or is it changing in importance or focus, or is it kind of static as far as what role data plays in granting and the nonprofit world?
Well, I think with data, what nonprofits have to understand, it is that return on investment. It is the most pivotal outside of your need statement bit of the grant. What is the data telling me about how effective your program is? So I can't emphasize enough. You need to have some way of telling the grantor we won. And
Mm,
that's usually through your data. Now, the interesting thing is, how we're tracking data. I'm like you, I like it when they give it to me. I like it when it's packaged. I like it when we have patterns. I like it. I like reviewing
right.
data. I don't want to be in the weeds of it. Um, but hey, if you can tell a great story with that data, you're so much more, it's such a big part of building that relationship with funders. I was talking to someone at the National Christian Foundation, and he was just mentioning, a lot of funders, a lot of the reasons why funders give is because organizations have a clear purpose and plan. Part of
Mm,
that plan and part of knowing you have a clear purpose and just knowing that you've thought things through is what data are you tracking? What does that look like? And it doesn't have to be ridiculously hard. You just have to have a plan. Okay, if what we're saying works, what's the data supposed to say?
yeah.
Um, Now, what's being required to be tracked, that's some of that's shifting a little bit on, it might be certain populations, it might be and that's where you just have to know your industry. What are they saying is best practices, so far as what's working, what's not, and then you can adapt your programming as you see fit. It's really funny. A lot of uh funders say they want a lot of data, and some nonprofits make a mistake of tracking everything.
Yeah.
No, pick 2 to 3 that are just really important and really key
Yeah.
indicators to your program. Don't stretch yourself too thin because, again, we're in theory land. And they may say, well, this is what we're tracking, but now we feel like this is the main wonderful thing that needs to be tracked
Right.
and all this data. So yeah, just pick 2 or 3 and really focus there.
Well, and the other thing that you mentioned that caught my ear was building relationships. I think, I don't think that most nonprofits, at least the ones that I've been engaged with, know that it's okay to reach out to a funder and try to start a relationship beyond the grant request, right? What is that? I mean, is that always acceptable? Are there limits there, boundaries? I mean, we don't want to promote stalking, right? We don't want to do that. But, short of that, is there what is the appropriate approach to building a relationship? I think that to me and maybe I'm asking an obvious question, or an obvious question, an answer with an obvious question with an obvious answer, but I'm curious, what is the acceptable way to build that relationship?
And that goes back to those 20 nuances that I mentioned.
Well,
really
can you pick 5 if you
pick
could?
5. Oh, for funders who have an open call for, we want to talk to you, follow those procedures to the letter. They've got a program director who wants to speak with you. If they've got an intake form, if they've anything that they tell you to do it.
Yeah.
Plan your conversation. Keep it to 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Be very respectful. If they don't have necessarily a way to contact them, get your board involved. See who they know and who they can actually reach out to. Boards have a lot of clout. And then, just think about it from the funder's perspective. If your ED reaches out, your ED is being paid to reach out, essentially. We know he or she is passionate about the vision, but it's still a job. Your board, they're volunteering. They just really care about this. It carries a lot more authenticity.
That's an interesting point. I would not have thought of that. Well, I could go on. We're pushing our time limit here. People are probably pulling in their driveways or getting into work. So we'll be respectful of that. But Bria, thank you so much for your time, your insights. How can people find you and IQ Ignited if they would like to learn more about your company?
Well, you can reach us at www.iqignited.com. We have an intake form. I'm just teasing. Love to hear from you. If you have questions, I hesitate to put my email out. I don't mind if you reach out for questions, but it would be better if you went through info@iqignited.com. Just for the fact of I think my inbox has about 12,000 emails right now, and I'm trying to do better about clearing it out, but life happens.
I think I'm at like 30, so I've given up.
I feel better.
I surrendered. I have, yeah. Well, great. Well, I encourage people, if you want to just learn more about grant writing, the grant process, Bria and her team are amazing, and just appreciate all the work that they do. Encourage people to listen to other episodes of our podcast. We have some around fundraising, and we have a few grantors in the library. So would encourage people to look for that. You obviously found this one if you're listening. So we are on Spotify and Apple and all those. And it's the Nonprofit State of Minds podcast. So we look forward to that. Bria, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to continuing the conversation in person here soon.
Thanks, David. Really had too much fun being on here. We need to do it again.
Thank you. I'm glad it wasn't painful. That's the good thing. So thank you so much. Look forward to talking later.
Look forward to chatting soon.